Because I mean, you guys, you beat the big companies there too, right? You beat Denon, Marantz, Yamaha, Onkyo, that Pioneer. They still don't have something that's 16 channels even today.
And that's right. No, now
Well,
one of the
I
I
just
will
think it's
say
cool.
Yeah, it's
one of the
exciting.
coolest things for me personally was I forgot what CES it was, but we had the prototype HTP-1, like it was still kind of
Hmm.
a computer. I was talking to somebody, and I look over and I see like 6 or 7 guys all huddled
Hmm.
around it, and they all have like taking notes and talking to each other. And they were, I noticed they were all Japanese, speaking in Japanese to each other. But I walk over to them, they all had Denon on their badges, and it was the engineering team from Denon trying to figure out how we did it at that price point.
Nice.
Now some of it,
Yeah.
but some of the way we can do things like this is Monoprice does a live and die based on the performance of the HTP-1,
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
You've
So
got a lot of the, yeah, true.
we can get real fun with the price points
Right.
sometimes.
Sure.
But a company like Trinov or Storm Audio,
They don't have that luxury. Yep.
right? That's why they
Mm.
have to have. That's one of the reasons their price points are higher,
Yeah.
and it's also some of the reasons they have, a better support structure than we do.
Hmm.
Too.
Sure.
So there are definitely some benefits.
I remember when you were coming out with the HTP-1 and you had reached out to me and you were going to send me one when it was ready. And I just told you up front, I said, Hobie, I said, if you can make this thing and send it out and be as bug free as possible, I
Yep.
said, at the price point, the feature set you're offering, you're going to blow everybody in this market out of the water in what you're offering in a processor. And you did that. I had reviewed the Emotiva RMC1. I did not have that experience. It was quite buggy, and hopefully they've got all those bugs fixed now with firmware. But that's a headache for a consumer. When a consumer gets
Yeah.
a product in and they're constantly going, okay, I'm doing this, and a third of the time I turn it on, I don't have audio. That's a pretty significant issue, and that was some of the issues that I ran into. And so when you sent me the HTP-1, I mean, literally there were some, I mean, we're talking really, really small hiccups, but I don't even think they were really that. It was really, really solid, well built. I had a great time with that unit. Was definitely grateful that I had a chance to experience. And then on a lot of my tours in Kansas City, there's other guys in Wisconsin, Missouri. They were running HTP-1s as well in their system, and it's a rock star, man. So the first ones a lot of people have been asking is in regards to the HTP-1. So I'm going to throw a couple of comments up here. Michael McAllister, we need HTP-1 info. Why were we abandoned? We've got John that says, hey, please ask Hobie what happened to the HTP-1. And M. Mooney says, please ask Hobie about the HTP-1 availability. And so there are probably going to be some other questions in regards to HTP-1, but can you kind of address some of those?
Yeah, so HTP-1 availability is really hit by a lot of component shortages in the product. Some simple things like IC chips. Obviously, the AKM factory burning down was a big factor, whereas the DAC, we're using a 4493 DAC, and the AKM factory burned down. They weren't able to manufacture any more DACs. They do have a new drop-in replacement that's available now that I think we could use. We were able to procure some DACs. Plus, just sort of there was a lot of behind the scenes, I would say, strife on, on the product. It was extremely challenging for us to support. The abandoned part, I think I could address the easiest this way, and it's a little on the personal side, but I was actually diagnosed with cancer a little over 18 months ago, and I sort of had to back away from being on the forums as much. It was kind of all consuming the first 6 months out of the gate for me, but I'm much better in a mental space now, where it doesn't sort of consume my life. I am going through treatment. I'll probably be on treatment the rest of my life, but it's going well.
Yeah.
I'm still here. It's not like I'm about to fall dead next week. I'll probably fall dead from diabetic attack more than cancer. The rate I'm going and the amount of donuts I like to consume. Yeah, that's kind of the reason I really took a step back from the forum side, other than a couple posts here and there. I do think I'll start to ramp that back up. The HTP-1 is currently being built right now. We should have stock. I've said this before and been wrong, but the parts are actually all here this time. So it should be sometime in January. We think we've addressed the boot loop issue. We think I'm pretty confident we'll end up having DTSX Pro functioning by the time it comes back into stock. We actually have it running it runs on the system already. It's just the GUI we need to adjust. It doesn't.
Yeah.
The HTP-1 currently doesn't know it has the extra speakers, even though it can decode them, which I don't know that makes sense. But
Yeah.
so it's coming, and trust me, not having that thing in stock, if anybody sells things for a living, that was a big black hole to try to comp from a year-over-year perspective. So I always wished I had it back in stock.
Yeah. Well, man, that is crazy. I know off camera you shared that with me, and that was something that I wanted. If you wanted to share that, that was totally up to you. And so that's a crazy blow, man.
It
I can't
is.
imagine.
It's not. Well, I think it's just better to be transparent.
Yeah.
Other than I'm not very mysterious. I think everybody that knows me, I don't ever have a problem sharing.
Yeah.
Or being straightforward, sometimes to a fault. But yeah, I just felt like it's just easier to be honest. But
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. Well, we're glad you're here, man. And I appreciate it. I mean, you could be doing a million different things, and you took time to answer these guys' questions. So, like I said, we're going to continue to go through these. So if you got questions, just drop those in the chat. We've got a couple others here, and then I'll switch back over to the chat. So some of them, like I said, were in regards to the HTP-1. We got that one. What about the future of the HTP-1? And is it even supported? Is the HTP-1 still supported now, which I'm assuming it is?
Yeah, it's still supported.
Can you share any and again, I know that there's certain things that you can share here on the channel and certain ones that
Right.
you're going to have to say, we'll just have to wait and see. And so I'm not going to make you say anything, but whatever you're willing to share, we'd love to know.
So there currently isn't really an HTP, quote unquote, HTP-2 like in development, right? But eventually we will upgrade the HTP-1 to HDMI 2.1. There are some things coming out from some other, licensees that they haven't announced yet that I'm already aware that the HTP-1 should have no problem supporting. So like in some ways there may never be an HTP-2, but there'll just be continuous upgrades to the HTP-1. Okay. Right? I mean, because the only thing I really think it's missing would be, obviously HDMI 2.1, right? And we're working on that. It's been way more challenging, I think, any of us ever anticipated on getting HDMI 2.1 boards that were cost effective for the processor, not having us to jack up basically, I don't want to jack up the processor $1,000 to include 2.1. Because I'm an enthusiast too, and as much as I would want it on there, there's only two components in the world right now that you need 2.1. Really, there's the PS5 or an Xbox Series X, and I just use like HDMI eARC on those. So I hook those up directly to my display to take care of the variable refresh rate or 120 hertz and all that, and then just feed the sound into the processor or receiver. And that's how I get around that. It'd be ideal to have 2.1 in the processor. Don't get me wrong. But after it has 2.1, and if it supports all the current codecs, it's sort of like what else? I mean, what would really, for me? I mean, it's a thing like what other feature set would make it be an HTP-2?
Right.
Because like if you look at the market as it is now, on this isn't disparaging anything, but from Yamaha and Onkyo, when they do their an annual refresh of the product, it's pretty much the same product, right, for the most part. Now there's been some bigger jumps on the feature set depending on the year, but some years it's the exact same. Actually, I mean, sometimes it's the exact same thing, year to year. So that's not going to be how this gets handled, right? There won't be a new processor every 2 years, sort of just because. I think there'll be more running changes and firmware upgrades.
So this one, we hit on it earlier, but what about maybe the DTS Pro update? Is there one coming, or is it here? Is that what's going on with that?
That's what we're working at. So I'm pretty much and so internally, I've sort of put a drop dead that DTS Pro has to function before we put it back out. So the processor probably could have been out earlier, but that's the main thing we're working on now. HDMI 2.1, like I said, so DTSX Pro actually already works on the processing chip that's in there. It functions fine. It's just that the GUI doesn't know there are extra speakers since DTS-X is locked to 11.1. So it doesn't, when Pro works, it doesn't realize like, oh, I can call these other speakers. That's really the only change we have to make, and then put change the GUI so that or the user interface so it recognizes that. It's not that difficult, and it's just we just need to work on it. We need to get around to working on it. HDMI 2.1. Some of the boards we have looked at have either been too expensive to where we have to raise the price of the HTP-1.
Right.
I kind of want to keep it at the price it is at. Another issue we run into the 2.1 boards is power draw, because it consumes a lot more power than the HDMI 2.0 boards. So that may entail changing out the power supply. So maybe when we upgrade 2.1, we'll upgrade the power supply at the same time. We're still trying to see if we can not do that, or if that is a must. But those are some of the things we're looking at. And like I said, from not that I'm trying to sell it, but there's only a couple components that need 2.1, and that's just I guess a PC to be a third one, but it's just the PS5, which I have, and an Xbox Series X, which I have too.
Yeah.
And I just hook those directly up to the display and do eARC out to utilize the 2.1 features, because I think it's internally I'll see like the cable product manager is always talking about 8K and 8K, why you need a 2.1 cable. And it's like 8K is not real. I don't think 8K is ever, you don't need 8K, you don't need 4K. I don't hope my wife doesn't listen.
Famous last words right here.
I don't know, Hobie. All right.
Strike that from the record. I did not say that. I never said that.
I'm about to say 1080p on my 150-inch screen doesn't look that exciting.
I was going to say at a certain size.
Yeah.
So if you could only put a 55-inch display, like 4K is kind of even at that point worthless, right? But 8K, like you're gonna need like a 150-inch screen for 8K. Even then, like we're not even watching 8K.
I'm not sure I would notice the difference between 8K and 4K on my size screen at my distance.
Right.
So maybe I would, but who knows?
I go to, there's a theater by I love this theater, the Harkins Theater by us. They have a Cine 1 screen, which is an 82-foot CinemaScope screen. That's a 2K projector. It looks fine. You're not even watching 8K in the cinemas.
Yeah.
So the fact that the thought that we need 8K on even an 85-inch display, I think is what's plus there's no content. It's just a whole bunch of other things.
But I think we're a long ways away from 8K. That is for sure.
Can I ask a question that I've had on my mind?
Do it, man.
So I really enjoy Monoprice products. I have a lot of the cables and so forth in my home theater and have for 20 years. Your HTP-1 was something disruptive to the market. So I thought it was interesting when you said, hey, is the space already filled, or can we make something disruptive? So the guy who said I would like 2 to 3 HDMI inputs and just a bare bones receiver, it's going to be hard to be disruptive in a market where you can go to Costco and buy a $500 receiver that does basically that. So it's probably not a good idea. But HTP-1 was kind of like, I remember everyone was clamoring for, 15, 16 channels for years. And the only option was Trenoff, which was
way up there,
the price of a car.
Yeah.
You guys came in and offered it for $4,000 and blew everyone's socks off. The forum was just a buzz. And then you've done cool stuff along the way, like introduced BEQ, the community base equalization thing. That's so awesome. I'm curious about your development team. I'm curious about like the internals of that. Is somebody on your team like designing this? Are you working with a third party? I know you probably can't reveal all that, but it's so cool that you've listened to the community and been there and made these types of functions. You really have done a lot for the AV community.
I appreciate you saying that. Like, I have. So sometimes I take feedback. I watch all the feedback, good and bad, right? And I try to address all the bad I can, and especially with the processor. It was really like getting just real-time feedback and things people wanted. And as we were talking about a little bit earlier, like some of it is way too niche. Like for instance, we had a couple people I think on the processor that wanted to do digital crossovers and things like that. Now, could the HTP-1 do it? Probably, but like it'd take a lot of time, energy, and resources to help 12 guys. 12 guys that want to use the HTP-1 for digital crossovers for their speakers. We would have had to make a lot of changes. But to me, listening to the community is actually a a big part of trying to make the product better. I mean, there have been sometimes silent revisions to things to make them better that we did to they may measure better than they have initially. I'm always doing running changes to the products to improve them. I appreciate it. It was a big focus for me and the engineering team, and we also had a pool of about 10 beta testers behind the scenes trying to put it all through its paces. And I knew too, right? I mean, because look, one of our main competitors is Emotiva in this space, right?
Sure.
And I knew the problems they were having with the processor were, very apparent on the forums. And I knew if ours came out and worked, we win.
Yeah. I told you that.
And so that was,
make it work,
yeah,
man.
I remember that conversation we had.
Yeah.
And it did. And that's why I wanted to take the next step and went the extra mile and tried to incorporate all this community feedback and like, oh, I wish it would support REW. Done. But yeah, I mean, but all that community feedback that we put back into that is what would make it hard to do an HTP-2. Like I don't want to do an HTP-2 just to get HDMI 2.1. That's why
Sure.
it may always be the HTP-1 until the processor inside there can support whatever comes out next.
Okay, so along that same question with HTP-1 versus HTP-2, you had mentioned it's probably not possible to switch to the new HDMI 2.1 boards because of a power difference that's required for a power supply.
With one of the boards we had access to, it would have not have been great with our power supply.
So is it off the table, or are you waiting until another board comes out that might use reduced power? Like I know I've read that question a lot. Like, hey, is this moddable? Am I ever going to be able to have HDMI 2.1 in my HTP-1, or is it a new unit? That's the question, I think.
No, we are still, when I say, on this, it's it's a group effort. Although I drove all the feature set. Trust me, at one point this was a much different process, but it's still possible. Everybody, it'll end up being in there. The board, the HDMI board that's in there now is module. Like the whole thing's kind of module, to be honest with you.
Nice.
To where you should swap a board. I mean, we are looking at things of doing, either 2 HDMI 2.1s or 4 HDMI 2.1s. We'll figure it out. And there are new HDMI 2.1 boards coming down the pipe too from other suppliers. For a while there, the choice wasn't that many different choices on boards, but that's kind of opening up a little bit. And also too, the boards we had access to were some of the same boards that were in like Denon that ended up not being so great. So, or even it kind of they were gigabit limited. So we didn't really want to put that in there either. Like I said, this has been the most complicated thing I've ever worked on. No wonder other companies have like entire teams dedicated to this.
And that's pretty remarkable statement though. I mean, the fact that you don't have some of the resources that they have, yet you were able to build something and dream up something and produce something that performs very well, very stable. And it was an answer to what the consumers wanted. They wanted a high, channel count, has all the bells and whistles for the most part, and just works. And that's a great accomplishment, man.
No, I appreciate it. And like I said, all the credit goes to the engineering team, man. They were amazing and dedicated and enthusiastic about putting out. They were proud they were able to put out a piece like this. So
it's really cool. Hey, I think I can speak for Michael and I. We'll both be praying for your health issue, man.
Yeah, man, for real.
That's real
I
tough.
appreciate it.
This is the first time I'd heard of that. I was like, and we even saw many people in the chat. They were like, dude, heart goes out to you. We love you. We appreciate you. Praying for you. So absolutely, man.
Yeah. Thanks for all the kind thoughts. I mean, the only thing I could say, it's kind of funny when people say like you're, war on cancer, or you're fighting cancer, because it's kind of passive. Like I sit in a chair, get an IV once a month, and take a chemo pill every night.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, progress has been
the best, man.
Fantastic. Very limited side effects so far. I don't have like a third arm growing out of my back yet. All that could make life interesting if it did. But
get more accomplished. I mean, that's all.
So no, I'm in a it took up a lot of headspace initially, but I'm in a much better. It's in a better place medically, or it actually wasn't. I mean, luckily it was all caught early, and It's just there won't be anything like there isn't a remission for me, but the treatment has worked.
Yeah.
So
Good.
I don't. It's like I don't. There isn't a clock on my life or anything like that. I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Like I said, I'll probably Dunkin' Donuts is going to kill me before this cancer does. And even if cancer kills me, it's really just a tie.
Yeah.
Because if I die, it dies.
Yeah.
That's the way I try to look at it.
We are all given a certain amount of time. We don't know when that time is up. So the
That's
cool
right.
What's
thing
right?
is
You're not even guaranteed today. Is that what they say? So
you make the best of today. You love your family. You be the best human that possible that you can be, and serve others, love others, live out your faith. If you have faith, all those good things, man. So, but definitely wishing you the
thank you.
best. Hobie, you've been awesome, man. You've answered literally all
Thanks
the
for having me on.